So, welcome everybody to problem set number 6, which will deal with the topic of taxes on labor supply. So, in exercise number 1, we are giving the following. Suppose that for every hour you work, you can earn $10 before taxes. Furthermore, suppose that you can work up to 16 hours per day and 365 days per year. Yeah, so the 8 hours which are not considered here are basically sleeping time. Yeah, so you cannot work or enjoy leisure in this time interval. Now, draw your annual budget constraint reflecting the consumption leisure trade-off under each of the following income tax schemes. A flat income tax of 20% on all income earned. So the assumption here is basically that we can earn some amount of money during the year, and we will fully consume or spend the money that we earned on consumption goods. And by choosing how much we work, we can increase the consumption. On the other hand, if we work less compared to some amount, we will enjoy more leisure. And what we are asking A is to basically, show how kind of the constraints or in the graphical way, the budget constraints change when we are having kind of different tax schedules. So let us start with the first one. So sub-exercise A. So I need to draw a coordinate system. 1 second. So on the x-axis, we have leisure. So not a 4, it should be leisure. And on the y-axis, we have consumption. So always try to draw as clean as I can, but it will be quite difficult. So let me just make this a little bit larger. Okay, this should be fine here. So let us consider first a situation without any tax. Okay, so just to see what happens if we have a flat tax. So if we do not have any tax, so what's the kind of maximum amount of money that we can earn? This will determine the intercept of the budget constraint with respect to the y-axis. So the maximum amount of consumption, so maximum consumption, let's be clear here that we consider the situation with no tax. So the maximum consumption will be the following. So we earn $10 before taxes, and now we do not have any taxes. So we can get $10 for each hour that we can work. We can work at most 16 hours per day, and we can work up to 365 days per year. So if we fully work at a wage rate of $10 without considering taxes, we can get a salary of 58,400. And this will be the maximum consumption that we can conduct. And we just put it somewhere, I don't know, let's put it somewhere here. So this will be then 58.400. So this is the intercept with respect to the y-axis, so with respect to consumption. On the other hand, maximum leisure. So maximum leisure is then given by us not working at all. So just enjoying leisure, which we can do 60 hours per day times the amount of days where we can enjoy leisure in a year, and that's 365. And this is equal to 5,840. Yeah, let's put it somewhere, I don't know, let's put it somewhere here. 5,840. And our budget constraint will be the line if we connect the two intercepts here. So this intercept with this intercept. Yes, and this is the budget constraint if we do not have taxes. So budget constraint, I will shortcut it with BC, no taxes. So what happens if we now have taxes? So for this, let me shift this a little bit to the left. So we have some space here on the right-hand side. And also let me make this here a little bit smaller. Oops. Okay, it's more difficult than I thought. This should be fine. Yeah. Okay, I lost the I dot there, but never mind. So, and also let me make this smaller. So now let's consider a situation with, this will be sub exercise A now. So now let's consider a 20% flat tax. 20% flat tax. Now, what changes is the maximum consumption. So maximum consumption, also shortcut this here. So why does it change? Well, the reason is simply because we do not earn $10 per hour anymore, but we only earn 0.8 times $10. So our net salary will now be $8 per hour. That's the most that we can get for each hour, or that's the exact amount that we can get for each hour that we work. So what we then have is $10 times 0.8, which is then the net salary or net wage per hour, times the amount of working time that we can choose, the maximum amount that we can choose per day, times 365. And this gives us $46,720. So if we, yeah, I mean, it will not, the distances will not be fully accurate here, but it's supposed to be somewhere, I don't know, somewhere around here. So then we have 46.720. And with respect to leisure, to the maximum amount of leisure, there is actually no change because the change only applied to the wage that we could get if we fully work. And now if we enjoy maximum leisure, we do not work at all, and hence we do not pay any taxes. And as a consequence, our maximum amount of leisure does not change. So it's still, so the x-intercept is still at this point here. Now let's connect the budget constraint or the intercepts, and then we get the budget constraint with taxes or with the 20% flat tax. Yeah, so let me denote this here. So this is a budget constraint with 20% flat tax. And as you can see, it's not as steep as the budget constraint that we had without the tax. And the reason is that the opportunity costs of leisure are lower when you have taxes compared to a situation without taxes. Because if you consume 1 hour of leisure with taxes, you give up less money than if there are no taxes. Yeah, so in particular here it will be $2 less for each unit of leisure that you're consuming compared to a situation where we wouldn't have any tax. Yeah, so taxes basically decrease the opportunity costs of leisure in this model. This brings us to sub exercise B. So if you compare like the assumption of a flat income tax to reality, you typically should note that the tax brackets are always chosen in the way that we have typically a progressive tax schedule. So the tax rate is increasing in your income, monotonically increasing. So the marginal tax rate. And this will be reflected to some extent in sub exercise B, where we have an income tax where you pay no tax on the first $10,000 earned, and you pay a tax of 25% on all income over $10,000. So let's choose a new picture here. So I will simply copy, I think this makes sense. I will simply copy this thing here every time. So if it's too fast for you because you need to redraw everything, just stop the video and then you can have more time. So just 1 second. Let me just copy this to the next page. Yeah. And I also need to remove some of the stuff. Just 1 second. I'll be finished soon. Yes. Oh, no, this was too much. Okay, this should be fairly enough here. Okay, I won't be as precise as I wanted to be. So now we have a tax bracket which is changing with your income, and that's what we need to consider. So let me just put this a little bit to the left-hand side because we need to write some stuff. Okay, so before, if you considered this picture here, what you saw was that the budget constraints had like one single slope. The slope of the budget constraints did not change, and the reason is because either we had no tax or we had a flat tax, which is basically saying that independent of how much money you're earning or how much work you choose, working hours, you will always pay the same amount of taxes. And this changes in sub exercise B because we now have two segments for the budget constraint. One where we do not pay any taxes at all, and one where we basically have to pay a tax rate of 25%. And this applies on all income over 10,000. Okay, so basically what we will have is that the budget constraint, so the budget constraint has two segments. So it will have, or it has, a slope of -10 at income and an income less than $10,000 and labor less than 1,000 hours. Yes, so if you work 1,000 hours, you earn, so if there wouldn't be any tax, you would earn $10, and that's exactly $10,000. And this brings you exactly to the threshold where you do not, up to which, it's a point up to which you do not pay any taxes at all. So your opportunity costs of leisure will be equal to $10 for each unit of leisure that you consume, up to the point where you consume a leisure equal to 5,840 minus 1,000 hours, basically. And this brings us to kind of a situation like this. So at some point, let's put it here, we have the point of leisure where you consume 4,840 hours of leisure, which means that you're working 10,000 hours. And this gives you, okay, I mean, the drawings are really not accurate, but they should somehow still make clear what I mean. So here you have $10,000. So up to this point, So if you start from this point here and increase your working time more and more, you're paying no taxes up to the point where you earn $10,000, which is here. And then there is a change in the tax bracket in that you start to pay 25% of the taxes on all income over $10,000. So now it has, so let's pull this first. Second, it has a slope of minus 7.5 at income over $10,000 and labor more than 1,000 hours. So starting from this point here, the slope of this budget constraint with this two segment kind of tax bracket, the slope changes and it will be flatter because the opportunity costs of leisure are lower compared to the opportunity cost of leisure where we do not have any taxes at all, which is represented by this budget constraint here. So what will be the maximum amount of consumption that we can get in this within this tax bracket, so within this kind of tax schedule? So maximum consumption is what is missing here. So maximum consumption is given by the following. So we have $10,000 which we can earn without paying any taxes. And then for the remaining work hour that we can conduct, which is then 4,840. So for the first 1,000 hours of work time, we do not pay any taxes. So we earn $10 per hour. For the next 4,840 hours at which we can work, we earn $7.5 per hour. And the reason is simply because we pay taxes on 20%. And if we calculate this, we get $46,300. And yeah, let's simply say it's it's like here. So again, the ratios here are not quite good, but it doesn't really matter. And now if we connect the points here and here, it shouldn't be nonlinear, it should be a straight line. Okay, this looks better. This gives us the budget constraint. So this is the budget constraint with two tax brackets. Okay, so one bracket where we do not pay any taxes at all, and another bracket where we pay a tax of 25%. And this gives us a kink at exactly this location here. And this finishes this sub-exercise. So then let us consider sub-exercise C. So sub-exercise C then considers a tax schedule with three tax brackets. So here you pay 10% taxes on the first $5,000 that you earn. Then you pay 20% on the next $10,000 and then 30% for any income above 15,000 then, yeah? So a tax bracket or a tax schedule with three tax brackets. Now, let me just again copy one of the things here. Oh, this is wrong. So I will need just the coordinate system one more time. So yes, and I will need to delete some of the stuff because here I will not use the old budget constraint without taxes. No, this was too much. Yeah, I'll leave it just like this. So now the budget constraint has three segments. Slope, so the slope will be -9 at income less 5,000 or less $5,000, or leisure of 5,340 and more. Second, it will have a slope. Yeah, so the reason for this first case is that for the first $5,000, you pay taxes of 10%. So this will basically be, yeah, a situation where you work for 5,840 hours minus 5,340 hours. So this is 500 hours. And for this 500 hours, you basically pay 10% taxes. And yeah, this is the reason why there is a cutting point at $5,000 here. Okay, so the second segment will have a slope of -8 at income between 5,000 and 15,000. And third, there is a slope -7 for income above 15,000. So what we can calculate now is first we can, so the maximum amount of leisure that we can consume will still be at 5,840. Okay, so if we do not, okay, this is an ugly number, just 1 second. If we do not work at all, we do not pay taxes, and hence the maximum amount of leisure is not affected by the tax bracket here. Yeah, so it's still at this point here. So there will be two more interesting points. Let me just put this a little bit more, or let me just make it a little bit smaller. Yeah, that's fine. So next there will be a point which is then 5,340. So, and this is the amount of leisure. If we, from this point, further decrease leisure, we end up in the next tax bracket. So from 5,840 to 5,340, we are choosing working time between 0 and 500, which gives us, if we wouldn't have taxes, 0 to $5,000 of income. And as a consequence, we basically have yeah, we end up in a new tax bracket if we jump above 5,340. So at 5,340, so let me just put a dot here. At 5,340, what are we getting? So we are working for 500 hours. So we get a gross salary of $10 per hour. And if we multiply this with the working hour, it's 500. But of course, we have from this we have to subtract the taxes that we have to pay, which is then 10%, and hence we multiply the 5,000 gross salary that we get if we work 500 hours with 0.9, and what we can consume then is $4,500. And this gives us kind of the first interesting point here. And this is the first segment of the budget constraint, which looks something like this. Okay, so this is the first segment of the budget constraint. And then we have the second interesting point, which is then at the following place. So let me just move this a little bit more here. So the second point will be at 4,340 hours of leisure, or this is kind of 1,500 hours of work. This gives another interesting point. I just put it somehow, yeah, just to get the right kings and the right slopes. It should be somehow around here. So if we work for 1,500 hours, for the first 500 hours, we are in one bracket, and for the next 1,000 hours that we work, we are in the second bracket where we pay 20% of taxes. If you add up the income that you can get, you get $12,500, and this is the maximum amount, or the amount that you can consume when you work 1,500 hours. So how did I get this? So for the first 5,000, you multiply this with 10 times 0.9, and for the next 1,000, you multiply it with 10 times 0.8, and this will give you 12,500. Okay, so this is how I came up with this number. And yeah, if you connect the dots here, let me just do this real quick. You get, so the important thing, it's difficult to see, but what you should see is that it's becoming flatter if we work more and more. And the reason is because the more we work, the higher are the taxes that we pay, and hence the opportunity costs of leisure are becoming less and less the more we are already working. Okay. Finally, the final point, which is interesting here, is a point where we have or where we do not enjoy any leisure at all. So maximum consumption is the next interesting point. So maximum consumption is given by the following. So for the first 500 hours that we work, we get 0.9. For the next 1,000 hours that we work, we get 0.8. And for the remaining 4,300, oh, sorry, this is of course wrong. This should be 9 and 8 here. And for the next 4,340 hours that we work, and there's another mistake, sorry, this should be 1,000. So for the next 4,340 hours we work, we get a salary of 7, and this adds up to 42,880. And this will be the last point of interest. And I know this looks very stupid, but it should be, just to be consistent, it should be closer to 12,500 here. So it's 42,880. And then if we connect the last kind of segment here, what you should actually get is that this is steeper. So steepest. And this part here is the flattest. And what is reflected by this is that your opportunity costs of leisure are increasing the more leisure you're consuming, because the less you work, the kind of like the deeper you get into the tax bracket in that you're paying less and less marginal taxes. So your marginal tax rate will become less and less the less you work, and hence your opportunity costs of leisure are also increasing, because if you do not enjoy any leisure at all, you will be at the lowest tax, the highest tax bracket, and hence then if you increase the amount of leisure, you do not lose as much due to additional work as compared to a situation where you are already consuming much leisure, which is then captured on the right-hand side here. Okay, this finishes sub exercise or exercise number 1. Good, let me just open up a new page. So exercise 2. How does making childcare costs tax deductible reduce the tax wedge associated with the fact that market work is taxed but homework is not? Does making childcare costs deductible increase or decrease social efficiency? So a parent can always do two things. So first, when it comes to children, it can pay for childcare. So a third party is caring for the child, being paid some wage, or the parent can stay home and yeah, provide childcare for the child by itself. So a parent, a parent staying home cares, a parent staying home caring for a child receives home production value home production value for providing the service. What this basically means is that if the parent is staying home and not going to work and is caring for its children, there is some value that the parent attaches to caring for its child by itself. And this is kind of the value for providing the service. On the other hand, if a parent works and hires a caregiver, it must pay the caregiver for the service. So if there wouldn't be a deduction for childcare costs, so without deduction of childcare costs, the payment for non-parental childcare is made with income on which taxes have been applied. So this basically means that if a parent decides to pay kind of a non-parental child carer for caring for the child, the parent must first earn the money in order to be able to pay this child caregiver. And by earning money, the parent already paid taxes. But if the parent is paying the caregiver, he needs to pay the caregiver the gross salary. So he needs to kind of also pay the total amount, which is larger than the net salary that the caregiver is given. Yeah, so there's kind of a double taxation happening there. So a consequence is that parent or a parent who pays for childcare must earn more than the caregiver earns before taxes. Okay, so the net salary of the parent must be higher than the gross salary of the caregiver. This is kind of the double taxation thing happening here. On the other hand, what is so this is kind of the payment or the costs of the parent has to suffer from if the parent is paying for childcare. On the other hand, if there is home provided childcare, home provided childcare, this is paid. So you might think that if you provide childcare for your child by yourself, there are no costs related to this, but obviously there are opportunity costs. So how do you pay if you provide home childcare for your child? Is by foregoing taxed wages. So home provided childcare is paid by foregoing taxed wage because instead of working, you basically um, care for the child, and your opportunity costs are what you could have gotten if you would have worked. Yep. So here, the costs of home care are less than the costs of a hired caregiver. Now, if you would make childcare expenses, if childcare expenses are tax deductible, there would be greater social efficiency by eliminating this difference. Yeah, and which difference are we meaning exactly? So the difference that if you care for the child by yourself, you must earn more than so if there wouldn't be um, like if childcare wouldn't be tax deductible, if you would like to um, if you would like to pay for childcare, you must earn more than the caregiver is earning before taxes. Yeah, so you also pay for this taxes basically. So this is what you're paying to him, the gross salary. On the other hand, if you consider home provided childcare, your opportunity costs must be lower than the costs of when you're paying for a caregiver. Hence, there is a difference in kind of the opportunity costs that you have if there is kind of no way to deduct childcare expenses from the tax, or yeah, deduct those expenses from the tax that you have to pay, and if there would be kind of a system where you could deduct childcare expenses from the tax, you would decrease this kind of difference that you have because the double taxation problem would be decreased because you do not have to pay for the gross salary of the caregiver because you will can deduct this basically from your gross income, which will be used to determine your actual taxable income. Yeah, and for this reason, if you introduce tax deduction with respect to childcare expenses, you would, yeah, diminish this difference, and hence there would be greater social efficiency because there would be less distortions. And this finishes exercise number 2.